from the moment we had the idea of Nala, we knew that we wanted it to have a really strong voice. And we had a really strong vision as to what it could be. It was stronger than either of us personally and cooler than us.
What went through your brain when you were coming up with the brand being like, no, it needs to be punchy, it needs to be bold?
We really just looked at the underwear market and it was very beige. It was very boring. It wasn't very inclusive, not size inclusive. There is so much more to give to this industry.
We literally got told, don't have women in your ads that are bigger busted because they're not going to get through.
We knew we had to get the brand out there, and so what we did is planted G-strings on people's cars around Bondi with a little handwritten note that said, hey, you left these at my place last night. XX Nala.
How do you gain traction and build a community when you're hamstrung by all of these guidelines that sit on social platforms?
So when someone says never, doesn't necessarily mean never. So whilst we were permanently banned on TikTok, and that was the words we got given, we have managed to overturn the permanent ban, which was a huge win.
It's pretty scary because you're right. These platforms are everything to our business, and it's quite scary to have all the power in their hands.
We literally got told by TikTok, I'm going to say it.
Chloe and Phil, thank you so much for joining me today and welcome to Top of Mind. I am really looking forward to this chat because we've just been talking for the last 10 minutes before we've started recording, and I'm I kind of wish we had started recording earlier because there were so many golden nuggets in there. Now, when I think of Nala as a brand, and I think we were just talking about this before, the saying of if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything really comes to mind, because you guys didn't really soft launch. You hard launched, and you hard launched hard when you launched Nala, and you stood for something that a lot of the lingerie or underwear or even fashion, market have been scared to or kind of teetered around when it comes to launching products or lines of clothing. Did you always know that you were going to have such a strong voice in this market?
Yeah, I think so, to be honest. So from the moment we had the idea of Nala, we knew that we wanted it to have a really strong voice. And we had a really strong vision as to what it could be. And it was stronger than either of us personally and cooler than us. We put a lot of effort into that pre-launch so that when we came out, it would make the biggest impact possible.
Yeah, and I think the vision that we had on day one, and we're now that was 2.5 years ago. We sort of worked on the brand for a year before we launched, and now been 18 months in market. So 2.5 years later, the vision hasn't really changed much. Sure, it's evolved a little bit, but if we got the very first sort of deck we pulled together of Nala, it's 90-95% the same as to what you see now. We had the vision, we've gone for it, and I think it's definitely evolved a little bit, but we're still very much on that path, and I think really proud to be as well.
Yeah, I love that. Now, you said before you are not it's very different to the brand that you guys are as individuals, and stronger than the brand you guys as are as individuals. So I think there's a natural kind of adversity to wanting to be risky with a brand. So how what went through your brain when you were coming up with the brand being no, it needs to be punchy, it needs to be in your face, it needs to be bold, when you two typically aren't bold and punchy and controversial?
Hey, what are you saying? I think when we decided we wanted to do Nala, we had a look at what was out there in the Australian market, and there really wasn't anything that was, there weren't any brands that were really doing it right. We, before COVID, lived in New York for 3 years, and New York is just this incredible melting pot of different cultures, different people, this incredible self-expression. People just walk around wearing the craziest things, so proud of their bodies, whatever they look like. It was just, it was we loved that. And then coming back to Melbourne, and we're both from Melbourne, grew up in Melbourne, it's a very, everyone, look, we're sitting here wearing black and jeans,
same.
Okay. But we really just looked at the underwear market, and it was very beige. It was very boring. It wasn't very inclusive, not size inclusive, race inclusive. We were like, there is so much more to give to this industry. And we just, I guess from that moment just knew that we could do it better.
Yeah. I love that. Hey, just a quick one. If you are loving this episode, help us grow and reach more people by hitting the subscribe button and leaving a review. I think as well, like when a brand or a product or a service is born, right? Like we were chatting about how both of our business kind of came to life before this. And I think, my business was born out of the idea of I'm like, why can't people pay for the things they need when they need it, as opposed to paying for a package or a retainer that potentially doesn't suit that client?
Yes.
So was there something that you identified? Because I'm like, neither of you two require size inclusivity. Neither of you two kind of, are the audience essentially that you might be directly speaking to in your initial campaigns. So where did this idea come from? Was there a problem that you saw that you were like, or exposed to, that you were like, we need to fix this?
So I think we started at the brand level. And so we kind of identified, okay, there's no real cool underwear brands here in Australia. We think there's an opportunity. And because we probably didn't have the product solution yet, we focused so much on the brand to start with. And we also thought, okay, like it's going to be underwear, it's going to be bras. Like there's only so much you can do from a product point of view. Like you need to stand out from a brand. I think where we probably underestimated ourselves way back when at the start was Chloe has another business, an online Pilates business called Go Chloe Pilates. And she surveyed, I think it was about, I can't remember, 5,000 or 1,000 women about like what they were missing when it came to underwear and bras and things like that. And we got some like really rich insights out of that. And I think what became clear to us was that there was a really underserved, let's call it like persona group of like bigger bodied women who bigger busted and just can't find products that make them feel good, that are comfortable, that are supportive and all those kind of things. And off the back of that, we then set out to, create products, not just for those people, but, with those people in mind. Absolutely. And so a lot of our products probably exceeded our expectations than what we originally expected. Like we probably thought, okay, we're going to be another underwear brand. Like the product's going to be, a little bit different. We're going to use some sustainable fabrics and we're going to be affordable and colourful and, all those kind of things. But I think what we ended up doing was creating a bunch of products that are really solution focused and like solve people's actual problems. And like they're our best selling products now.
Yeah.
Like by a mile. So it's been amazing, like to see it's actually the products. This is going to sound so lame because I know it's just a bra, but like that changed women's lives because they've never been
bra can
like they've never been able to access anything quite like it at an affordable price that makes them feel good, makes them feel confident, makes them feel sexy, that fit. They can afford more than one. They don't have to like get custom fitted in like this awkward change room with like a bra fitter and like it's this new experience and new product that just.
We do this thing where every Monday we kind of share customer reviews that we receive throughout the week, and like some of the reviews like. Sometimes like you almost laugh at like how passionate and exaggerated they are. Like, this is the unicorn bra. It's changed my life.
Yeah,
like
unicorn bra. That was one from last week. I love that.
And like like I've been shopping for bras for 40 years and never found anything that can fit.
I've never felt like this before in my life. Like stuff like that, which is, it's pretty amazing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look, in my own experience, we were just talking about it before. Like, at one point in my life, I was a lot bigger. And I have this like visceral memory of sitting in a change room crying, just being like trying to try, bras, trying to try outfits on. And like, I just remember sitting there being like nothing fits me. And just having this memory of like, I need to fit into these clothes, not have these clothes fit me. And I think it was something a lot later that kind of came down that I was like, no, these clothes should fit me at the stage that I'm at. And again, like it comes back to, my business now. It's like, we should meet people where they're at.
Yes.
Not be like, hey, this is where we are. Take it or leave it.
It shouldn't just fit, right? Though, like it should fit and it should also make you feel good. So it shouldn't just be like a beige, boring bra or whatever. It should be like something that you put on and you feel like, okay, I'm ready to tackle the day. I feel amazing. And I think we've like created products that fit really well and like, go to a really wide array of sizes, but these people put them on and feel great. And that's like, I think, hopefully the superpower of Nala, but I think it is, yeah.
And you're so right as well, because I think I go back to that memory of me being like, it's taken me fucking 5 months to find, something that fits me or something that makes me feel good. And even after I lost a whole heap of weight, I didn't want to throw any of those things out because I was like, it took me so long to find it. Like, what happens if I get back to this weight and then I have to go through that same process of not being able to find stuff again? So I really think you guys have hit the nail on the head when it comes to kind of the product and the offering, but also who you're talking to and the kind of bigger picture there. Now, I want to go down the path of where you started because, you know, you both briefly touched on it. You know, your backgrounds are not in underwear or fashion. And I think that naturally people will be like, oh, well, surely they've got some sort of background in, you know, fashion or marketing or brand or something because, you know, you're very brand heavy. And I certainly assumed before I met you guys that there would be some sort of marketing or branding background there. So what were your respective backgrounds and how did you kind of use those to start Nala or to kind of feed Nala?
Yeah, so I'm a physio.
Love.
And a Pilates instructor.
Yep.
Always worked in like as a physio and Pilates teacher. And during COVID, we were living in New York, got stuck back in Australia, we're living here, started my own online Pilates business. That was like my very first introduction to any sort of business, anything. And I mean it when I say I knew absolutely nothing about business. It was just
nobody does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was just such a steep learning curve. Suddenly, it was very fun.
Yep.
But building a brand, suddenly I was the brand, which
Yeah.
was also very new.
Yeah.
But that is what sort of gave me a bit of experience. And then you can talk to your background maybe.
Yeah, so I've been in sales tech for over 10 years. I started at a startup called FanHub. I was the second employee and then went to manage or launch their US and UK arms of the business. And so we were overseas and, as Chloe mentioned, in New York. Came back during COVID. We came back unexpectedly for 2 weeks. My sister was having a baby, so we here to meet the baby. And then on the third day, COVID happened. We got stuck here, never went back to New York. So I did a brief stint at a company called Airwallex, which is a fintech company, which at the time I think was Australia's fastest growing startup. I wasn't it wasn't right for me.
Yeah.
And so kind of quit not knowing what I was going to do next.
Yeah.
I was lucky that FanHub, the first business I mentioned, had exited in that time. And I was the second employee, had a bit of equity, and so kind of had a bit of a platform between Chloe's business and how I guess what we got out of FanHub to kind of do something. And so Chloe had kind of, when we came back from New York, went underwear shopping and was pretty uninspired because most of her stuff was in the US.
Yep.
And so the idea of Nala was born. We had some sort of family connections in the rag trade, and so that kind of helped. And then went for it. We sort of just went all in. I sort of for a year worked on Nala full time, obviously not taking a salary. We weren't making any money. It was pre-launch. Chloe sort of split her time between GoClo and Nala, and then we went to market October 2022, which
I think with GoClo as well, I knew nothing about business. Phil knew a lot more about business, and they used to help me. We used to sit down. We used to have business meetings.
I've got trauma from these.
I have them with myself.
We used to have business meetings, and I'd say 80% of them ended in me crying because I had never genuinely never received feedback on work I never worked in a team environment before. It's very different.
Yeah.
And I would just always cry, and Phil would be like, what do I do? But I think it was a great introduction to business, honestly, for both of us, and also working together.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was doing it, I was so passionate about it. I loved it so much. And then Phil, I think also you enjoyed, it was sort of our first introduction to building a community and building a business, building something, and very different businesses, my Pilates business to Nala, but a lot of the same principles apply still in terms of having a product people love, building a community and growing it.
Yeah.
So we could sort of apply it in that way, even though it's very different.
Yeah, and I think it was great to allow us to create some boundaries with working together
that
as well.
too.
And
I was going to say that in itself, there are days that I sit here being God, I would love to have a co-founder of my business to have business meetings with and bounce ideas off and be hey, am I going crazy, or is this something? But then there's also days that I see people in business together, whether they're related, dating, married, or they're just two friends that have kind of come together.
Yes.
That I'm like, God, I'm so happy I don't have a co-founder, because there's people that, they disagree, and by nature of having two opinions or two people in a room that have very different backgrounds, you are going to have those moments where you're like, no, this isn't right.
Yeah, for sure.
Was there something from each of your kind of backgrounds that you kind of took into Nala that you were like, no, I've learned this from this, and we're going to implement that in this brand? Hey guys, if you are listening on Spotify, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the Q&A function on Spotify.
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, like, my brand was all about being really open, inclusive, welcoming to all sizes, like all abilities, all people. And like those principles very much came across in Nala.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a Pilates platform, but it's not about like, it was never focused on weight or aesthetics or anything like that. That is one of like the core principles of Nala, being inclusive to all different body sizes, no body shaming. We don't retouch our images, like stretch marks, wrinkles, things like we would never retouch anything like that. Like that's a huge part of the Nala brand. I don't know about you.
For me, like not from the brand point of view, but probably from like the business side, like having been at Fan Hub and sort of see that business grow and grow pretty quickly. But at times I probably got frustrated with like, it was never slow growth, but like maybe cautious growth is the way to describe it. And then sort of the flip side at AirwallX, where it was like, as I said before, like I think the fastest growing startup in Australia at the time. And I kind of felt like it was probably a bit too fast.
Yeah.
And so tried to like sort of take the way those two businesses scaled and kind of meet somewhere in the middle. And I think that's kind of how we've approached Nala, and I've been able to like take what I liked about each of those kind of things and try and bring it to the culture that we're starting to build at Nala, which is a really strong one. So hopefully that keeps going.
I love that. I think you're so right though. I think, when I started my business, it's the same. Like everyone's like, oh, how did you do it? Because if anyone tells you that they know what they're doing when they start a business, they're fucking lying. Like,
I completely agree.
Point blank. Like, I used to think that I used to look at people that own businesses or started businesses like, God, they've got it all together. They know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, the more time I spent in my business growing it, I was like, the more people I met that I was like, you have no idea what you're doing, right? And even owners of like massive businesses or like leaders of like massive banks or insurance companies that you're just like, you're in charge of this place? Like, how? And I think, that became really evident for me. And, the only principles that I employed were like, I just know what I don't want to do. Like I've had 10 years of working in the industry, compiling my experience of all of the things that I hated about the industry, about my own experience, etc. And then I just did the opposite of that in my business. And I think that's really evident with what you guys have done with Nala, in the sense that, Chloe, your platform was built, the Pilates platform was built to help and to create this safe space for people. And it's really evident that Nala does exactly that. Yeah. And I think it's just a different vehicle or a different medium that you're providing that in. And I think it's really nice to see that kind of common thread through kind of your backgrounds, but then where you are now, where you're still helping people, you're still providing that kind of safe space. And then you've got this like business experience like layered over it, which then obviously has helped the business to get to where it is today. Now, I want to go into kind of a bit more tactical side of things. Your TikTok advertising has been permanently banned. You're shadow banned on Instagram, and these platforms like Instagram and Meta and Google and TikTok and, Pinterest, they hold so much power over how a brand can build and grow. And, if I speak to most of the businesses we work with today, especially small businesses that have scaled, they've started their business on social media and they've scaled it that way. So how are you navigating this as an underwear brand that obviously, you guys are an underwear brand. You have to show the product on bodies, and how you choose to show that product on bodies has been, dictated by how you want the brand to kind of look, feel, be received. Yeah. But how do you gain traction and build a community when you're hamstrung by all of these guidelines that sit on social platforms?
So my biggest learning of this is when someone says never doesn't necessarily mean never. So whilst we were permanently banned on TikTok and like that was the words we got given, we have managed to overturn the permanent ban, which was a huge win. And like also shout out
I'm even
to
like nervous hearing you say that. Like,
Don't let them
so
hear
like,
you. They didn't mean it.
shout out to, you know, some of the, I think, incredible women that were working at TikTok that sort of really canvassed internally and fought for us to like get overturned. And we've sort of been able to create a process with them to make sure that we're doing things that sort of adhere to what they want, but still allow, you know, to show real women and show women's bodies more so than we could previously, even though maybe not as much as we would like. And so like, with all of those things, we've actually had like, you know, TikTok, Google, Meta, when we first launched, like we had issues with all of them and we've managed to like work through most of them, which is great.
But it's taken like, it's taken a really long time.
But I think like the platforms, like we went pretty hard at the platforms initially, and like to their credit, particularly I think Meta more than the rest, like they've really improved their policies and their values and have allowed brands like ours to like do things that once upon a time would be considered pushing the boundaries, but more so like now becoming, I'm not going to say commonplace, but more common. So,
but I will say as well, it's like pretty scary because you're right. Like, these platforms are everything to our business.
Of course.
Like that's where we've built, like Instagram is where we've built our strongest audience, our strongest community. That's where most of our customers are. We're growing community on TikTok. We spend on advertising, but like the real communities live in these places. And then also when it comes to growth, paid advertising is an enormous part of our business. And it's quite scary to have all the power in their hands. And at any point they could turn around and say like, sorry, no, we have decided we don't want to see cleavage. We don't want to see like a body in a G-string because we don't want to see butt cheeks or like, which happens. So
we literally got told by TikTok, like, I'm going to say it. we literally got told, like, don't have women in your ads that are bigger busted because they're not going to get through.
So, like, we could have a woman with a smaller bust in a bra that doesn't have cleavage. That's more likely to get approved than, like, a woman in that same bra who has a bigger bust and has then cleavage. That is much more likely to get banned. So
that's absurd.
Yeah,
like when we got, I'm sure it's in an email somewhere as well.
Better.
Like, you're just like
what
is going on?
There's so many things like that. Like, and the hard thing is we have to play by their rules because they hold the power. But like even we have a lot of products that are mesh, so they're sheer. So when you're wearing them, you can see nipples. If we direct an ad to a landing page that has a mesh product on it and you can see nipples, then it'll get banned. And like potentially it's not just the ad that gets banned, it's like potentially like your whole account could get banned. But then it's like
that's what happened. Like literally, that's what happened when we got banned. We got the wrong landing page up and like for one ad and it wasn't even the ad, it was the landing page that the ad was directing to, and like it was like we've got really sheer products. It wasn't even one of our like sheerest products. Like it was like double layered mesh.
Like a shadow, a nipple shadow. Yeah. But then even further than that, this is just outrageous. But anyway, even our non-sheer products, it's not okay to see like if you've got like an erect nipple and you can see like the outline of the nipple, but not actually the nipple. Just like, you've got erect nipple. It's a cold day. Yeah. Like that is also not okay.
Which is crazy for me because the first thing that I think of is the Skims product that launched.
Yes.
With the nipples, right?
Yes.
And like Kardashians hold a lot of power globally. You know, they have a lot of spending power. So it's like, okay, does money talk when it comes to what's allowed and what's not allowed?
Yeah.
Because that went viral, you know, that was everywhere.
Yeah, and you know what, if like it takes Kim to like push the boundaries and to make things better, like great.
Yeah.
But you're right, like it should be able to come from grassroots businesses like ours and not you know.
Absolutely. Like hopefully it is the same rule for everyone regardless of how much cash you're investing. But sometimes, especially with advertising, like the media landscape is exactly the same. You know, we see the bigger players that have more money have more of a share of voice in the market.
Yeah.
And it doesn't give a voice to those independent businesses or independent, you know, agencies or news outlets even to then start having that conversation. So yeah, that's shocking.
But like, you know, in like this is probably the first conversation I've had around this issue where I like realized this, but like we took a really strong stand against this sort of stuff. And like, we literally put like a giant inflatable boob down the Yarra River
I want to talk about
to be like, this is ridiculous. It's just a boob.
Yeah.
And like, you know, that was probably 12 months ago now. And like in the 12 months, it's actually really improved. And so I'm not saying it's all us.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's, you know, trends in society and cultural norms and stuff like that as well. But like, it's nice to have been somewhat a part of that journey and to see it improving.
Yeah,
And
100%.
I think, you know, for women, hopefully it normalizes things a little bit, which is good.
Yeah, and I think it's just something that's kind of, I thought about a bit, you know, when we started speaking initially, but Phil, for you, like in a predominantly female, you know, focused industry where you're fighting for the right for a nipple to be seen, I think I see it quite a bit, especially around the conversation of like women's rights and like, you know, women in the workplace and even International Women's Day. Men feel as though they don't have or they can't have a voice because they're kind of damned if they do say something and they're damned if they don't. You know, if you're sitting there being like, everyone should be able to see a nipple on a page, and everyone's like, okay, Phil, like, cool, like, what's your things with nipples?
So true.
Do you know what I mean?
Creepy Phil.
But then creepy Phil, yeah. But then in the same breath, if you don't say anything, you're not helping the fight for the nipples to be free on a platform. And it doesn't matter whether it's a female nipple or a male nipple or a trans nipple or a binary nipple, like non-binary nipple. It's a nipple, full stop. So where do you find yourself in that conversation? Because I have these conversations with my male counterparts, you know, especially around women in the workplace and, you know, being, you know, a guy, for example, a good friend of mine, he has a team that he manages, and he was saying, you know, I really want to let the girls in my team know that, you know, if they've got like a bad mental health day or if they're having, you know, they've got massive period pains. One of the girls suffers from endometriosis, and he gets that because his wife also suffers from endometriosis. But he finds the conversation really hard to broach because he's like, I don't know that pain. I can't empathize because I've never been through it. But I want to be able to have these open conversations with the women in my team without A, coming across like a creep, and B, like just having like a normal conversation as though I'm somebody that's in their corner. And I feel like far too often men feel as though they're kind of damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. So how do you kind of manage that conversation now being a co-founder of a predominantly female underwear line? How do you manage that conversation?
I appreciate the question. Like, it's something that like I've definitely struggled with over the 2.5 years we've been doing Nala, and like it's, I think, got more and more comfortable with it as time has gone on. You know, thank Chloe a lot for probably a lot of like guidance and support throughout, like, you know, understanding these issues, supporting me, learning about these issues. I think, like, yeah, as I said, I've got more comfortable with it. But there are times where I'm like, okay, I still feel a bit uncomfortable. Like, for example, you know, like we'll have shoots and we've got, you know, women running around in their undies, and like they're our most important days. Like, we're spending, you know, tens of thousands of dollars on these shoots.
And some of these models also are like, so they're not even running around in their undies. They're just like stripping off.
Yeah. And so like I try and like, you
Which they're the perfect models for you guys, because they're just like embracing their body for everything, right?
So obviously times like I excuse myself. I don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. Like, and yesterday is actually a perfect example. Like, at the moment we're running a campaign with Bella Management where we're looking for Australia's next real model, and they're going to be the next face of Nala, and we had like castings for that. Amazing. And so these are people that have never been signed with a modelling agency. And like, you know, their first foray into modelling. And so I just sort of said to the team yesterday, like, look, I'm actually not going to come to this one. Like, we want to make sure, the priority here is to make sure everyone feels really comfortable. These are new models, like, they're like, you know, yeah. So yesterday I just, like, for example, didn't come because not because I didn't think it was, it was more I just was like conscious about making other people feel good, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I haven't really answered your question. I've gone around in circles.
I didn't tell you this. The Bella team asked where you were. Like, where's Phil? Why isn't Phil here? I was like, nah, he decided to sit with this one out, like, just to make sure everyone's comfortable. She's like, oh, that's sweet. He should have come though.
And that's what I mean though, right? Like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. Like, if you did turn up and there was one or two women that did feel uncomfortable because you were there, and that's their preconceived kind of experience or opinions of how men feel about women. But then it's like, if you didn't go, then it's like, well, where is he? Why isn't he here? Like, it's his business just as much. So I feel like it is a really like fine line that you walk down. And it's, it's the same. There's so many examples, not just men versus women. And I don't want to make this a conversation about men versus women, but, even being a young business owner, I feel like I don't have enough experience to be able to have certain conversations with people that are older than me. But then you've got people that are older than you that aren't having those conversations because they just don't care, or they're not as exposed or as experienced in that kind of landscape. So I think it is a kind of fine line, and I think I want to kind of focus on the fine line and kind of go down that risk element. Like you mentioned it before, you put a boob in the Yarra, and I love it. Shout out to Grace and her team at Movement.
Killed it,
we love
Grace.
it. But there are so many businesses, like I see it all the time, whether it's with an event, whether it's with getting their team to start posting on LinkedIn, whether it's just generally putting out content that stands for something. There are so many teams and businesses that are risk adverse, and they would rather teeter on the side of being safer than sorry. Whereas I feel like you guys are like, ask for forgiveness once it happens. Have you always had a good relationship with risk?
Okay, we're very different. I did once go skydiving, but then after that, something happened, and I don't know. We're different. Phil takes risks.
Yeah.
When it comes to business, like, you take risks, and obviously, like, sensible, like, weighed up, more calculated risk. But like, we've taken lots of risks with Nala.
Yep.
I am a lot more cautious.
Yep.
But I think I say most of the risks we've taken have paid off for us. And we've got a lot of attention for those risks.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of brands have looked to us to be like, wow, like, you've done this thing.
Yep.
That's awesome. Like the boob, that was,
amazing.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
That was an incredible project, and that was a huge risk. Even like smaller things, like we didn't even know if like the police would come and tell us to deflate it on the day, or like we were going to get in trouble for it. Like we had no idea on the day how it would go. We had no idea like what kind of press we would get. We had no idea if it would pay off. Like there were so many questions, and it was a huge investment.
Of course.
But it was amazing.
Yeah.
And it really paid off for us, and has become a huge part of our brand story as well. And the messaging was great, and I'm very grateful we did the big boob.
We always say you got to risk it to win the biscuit.
We always say that. We actually always say that, like outside of work.
Yeah, I mean, I have this saying that I've had for years on the back of my phone, and I have it in my house. It says, "No risk, no story." And I think that it's something that, I was talking to my team about.
Do it for the plot.
Do it for the plot, yeah. I think, the older I get, I'm like, I can't keep focusing on the plot. I've got to have some sort of like logical thinking here. But I think that, it comes back. I was talking to my team this week about it, where like a type 1 and type 2 decision. Like a type 1 decision is something that you can walk through the door of that decision and you can't go back to what you were doing before, right? And then a type 2 decision is you walk through the door of that decision and you can always go back to what you had before. And I think that, it probably is similar with you guys when you started Nala. It's like, okay, well, can we go back to doing Pilates and being a physio or working in a tech company? Yeah. So why don't we do it?
Yeah.
And it was the same as when I started my business. It's like, can I go back working for a white crusty old man in a marketing or advertising agency? Sure. Would I enjoy it? Absolutely not. But like, can I do it? Yeah. So I was like, what? There's no harm in trying. Thanks for listening. If you loved this conversation, don't forget to tune in to our next episode to hear part 2. Don't forget to review and subscribe if you are loving this content.